So the one thing our content creators are quite good at, and that's not showing you our mistakes and faults on camera. In today's video, I made a boo-boo and I want to share with you exactly what happened and how I fixed it. So as you can see in front of me is a 6-seater epoxy table we are currently busy with. And the mistake I made was when I inserted my slabs into the mold, I applied wax release mold into my form, but I think I didn't apply enough wax in one section of my table. What does that mean? It means that when I removed my table from my mold, the white melamine stuck to the underside of my epoxy table. And this is my journey on how I tried to fix it. And I want to share with you what happened so both me and you won't make the same mistakes again. So without any further delay, let's get into today's video. So after I removed my table from my mold, my white melamine sheet stuck to the underside of my table, and that's where I realized I need to break off the white melamine sheet from my table. And this piece you see here got completely stuck to the underside of my table. So obviously my first reaction was, well, this is not a big problem, I can do this quickly. Well, there was a big surprise that waited for me. So my first reaction was to take a scraper and a rubber hammer and try to hit the scraper underneath the white melamine sheet to try and remove the white melamine from the underside of my epoxy table. Well, with a lot of attempts, sometimes the scraper will go under, but I won't be able to break the white melamine sheet off from my table. And I was so scared of hitting the scraper at the wrong angle that I might hit straight into the epoxy table. And that's when I decided to bring out the big guns. That's when I brought out the belt sander with a 60 grit sandpaper. I honestly thought that this was going to work better, but only after sanding about 20 seconds in, I realized that the sandpaper only makes the surface much more smoother. And yes, so this was another epic fail. And at this point, I started to get extremely irritated. And that's when I decided to bring out my router with a small flush trim bit. So the whole idea was to obviously not go too deep into the white melamine sheet, only leaving a small space between the last bit of wood and my epoxy table. And the idea I had here was to cut one groove in the center of the white melamine sheet, and then obviously use the melamine on the left and right side of the bit as a surface my router can slide on basically. And I will definitely not recommend this step. A freehand router without any control can get extremely dangerous. At first I went slowly, and as I progressed I started getting more comfortable with the router to a stage that I removed so much material at once. And that's where I want to give you advice. Don't get too comfortable with power tools, because they still stay dangerous, and you always need to stay in control of your power tools. And it was exactly at this point that you can realize power tools can get really dangerous. You'll see my bit actually broke off here, and that's what's going to happen if you get too comfortable with your power tools. At this stage I was so irritated. I decided that I can either do this job in 3 hours or I can do it in 20 minutes. So I obviously took the 20 minutes, And I noticed that if I move the router in smaller sections like here, it removes a lot of material at once. But this is very dangerous. Always keep that in mind. After all my material has been removed, I went back to Mr. Belt Sander with a 80 grit sandpaper, because 60 grit is going to be too aggressive for the table, and I still only want to sand the melamine surface and not the epoxy table at this stage. So after sanding with the 80 grit, I noticed that the 80 grit was too aggressive. Then I moved to 100 grit. That's a little bit softer on the surface, and that's not removing too much material, because remember, you don't want to aggressively remove the melamine sheet, because you don't want gaps and too aggressive lines the belt sander made into your epoxy table by removing too much material at once. And then I removed to my Festool Rotex sander with a 80 grit sandpaper, starting on the Rotex mode. And if you didn't know, the Rotex got two settings. A Rotex setting that's more or less like the belt sander setting, and then you get the normal orbital sander setting. So I used my Rotex setting, and this actually worked very well. And only the last bit left, and it was at this stage that I was so irritated with this whole process. And now that we've learned our lesson, we know exactly that you need to apply enough mold release to your table to prevent this from happening. So yes, I am also human. I also make mistakes. And the only way we can learn is by making these mistakes. And I can promise you, this mistake will never happen again. Now we've got some really exciting news we want to share with you. It's now September 2021. In October, our website will be live. What does that mean? It means that all our previous projects and our future projects, drawings will be available for you to download. And I am also currently busy drawing up a complete data sheet going into intense detail on how we build all our epoxy tables. What does that mean? It means that I'm going to share with you exactly all my knowledge, research, and experience, putting it on a data sheet for you to download. Now you want to make sure to follow us on all our social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram. I am going to leave a link down in the description where you can find us, and where we will be announcing once our website is live, and all the drawings and data sheets for you to be able to download. And I honestly hope you enjoyed today's video. I definitely learned something new today, and I will be posting the finishing of this table within the next week or two. Make sure you like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification button so you don't miss out on any future projects we're posting. Thanks guys, see you next week. Cheers.